What's going on, everybody? 𝇅𝇅𝇅𝇅𝇅. Today we're going to explain the origin of the Djed and how this became letter 𝝌. So to begin with, according to Egyptian mythology, Set and 72 conspirators trap Osiris, shown here, in a 300 cubit chest, and they throw him in the Nile. And Nile equals 365 in alphanumerics. The 300 is letter T right here. 60 is letter 𝝌, and 5 corresponds to the 5 apogomental days that Thoth won playing a game of Senate with Khonsu, the moon god. So 360 times 1/72 equals 5 days, and that equals the Egyptian year. These were the 5 days that Bet was able to give birth with her husband Djed to the E² children, or apogomental children. So in the myth, Set traps Osiris in the chest, like this. He gets trapped in a chest that exactly fits his body. And then Set throws the chest of Osiris into the Nile, and then the chest floats down to Byblos, which is at the center of the TO map here. This is the Nile, this is the Mediterranean, this is the Phasis River, and this is the Okeanon that surrounds the T. And these are the 3 continents: Libya, Egypt, Asia, and then Europe's in the back. So the chest of Osiris floats down to Byblos, and it turns into an evergreen tree. The chest grows into an evergreen tree, which is called a tamarisk. So then Isis is the wife of Osiris, tracks down and finds out that the chest had grown into this evergreen tree, and it's at the palace of Byblos. These are the 4 papyrus columns of the papyrus of Byblos. And Byblos in alphanumerics equals 314, because B is 1, plus I is 10, B is 2, gives us 14, L gives us 30, O is 70, and S sums up to 314. So what that means is Byblos is a cipher for the circumference of the TO map divided by the diameter. So Isis finds the chest of Osiris that had grown into an evergreen tree, and she convinces the pharaoh to give her the chest. And the pharaoh, convinced by Isis, gives away, or originally the pharaoh used the tamarisk tree to make the pillars of his palace. So Isis convinces the pharaoh, or the king of Byblos, to give her the pillars. So again, before I take this off here, this is the stability of the cosmos. So you see right here, the early forms of letter 𝝌 in Etruscan are 4 squares. That corresponds to the 4 squares here of the palace of Byblos. And then the Greek 𝝌s look like this. This is the one from First Dynasty. And here we see the evolution of 𝝌. So Isis convinces the king of Byblos to give her the pillars. She takes the pillars, and they get stacked together like this. And the 4 stacked pillars together become the Djed. And the Djed is an Egyptian astronomical symbol for the ecliptic pole, which is the precession of the equinox pole, or the pole of the Earth rotating at 23.5 degrees angle around the Sun, which is contrasted with Polaris pole, which always points upwards to the pole star. So over here we see the eye of Ra or Horus, located at the center of Byblos, at the center of the Ethiopian. Here we see that Isis has to burn the king of the child of Byblos at the center of the Teo map. Here we see R, the ram horn, which gives us the word radius. And then the circumference divided by diameter gives us 3.14, or the name of Byblos. And all of this comes from Isis and Osiris 16. Where you see I decoded this today from the 4 pillars. But to give a little history of the situation here, it was Flinders Petrie who first suggested in 1892 that the Djed was derived from a pillar with 4 superimposed capitals, alternatively a picture of 4 pillars, one behind another. Just like we just saw here, 4 papyrus columns, one behind each other. So here we see 4 pillars superimposed, but this is what I posted at the start on the 2nd day of this month, 2nd day of April, whereas I had figured out that this thing, the Djed, corresponds to 4 pillars, papyrus pillars, because these are the early forms of letter Xi, which I was making for the kids block, which is block 15, but I didn't know where these pillars came from until today when reading Isis and Osiris, wherein we see that the chest votes to Byblos, and then Isis has to nurse the child by letting the child suck on her finger instead of sucking on her breast. And in the night she would burn away the mortal portions of her body, and she turns into a swallow. And then she flits about the pillar, and she lights the baby on fire. And also the goddess disclosed and asked her for the pillars which served to support the roof. So those are the 4 pillars that supported the roof of Byblos, which are right here. So what this means about burning the child, if we go to this page, which I just wrote today, 12 hours ago, we see Osiris getting thrown in the river. There's Osiris turning into the tamarisk tree, grows into this. There's his chest with the tree around it. So here's Osiris, turns into a chest, then he grows into this evergreen tree. And here's what the evergreen trees look like in Egypt. And there's Osiris. The base of Osiris is the cubit, side of the cubit, which means his body corresponds to the 28 alphabet letters. Here's the 5 epigomenal children: Osiris, Horus the Elder, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. So again, these 5 children correspond to the 5 days added to the 360-day standard Egyptian year to make a 365-day year. And they were born. So Bet originally had a curse put on her, which she wasn't allowed to give birth on any day of the standard 360-day year. So Thoth wins 5 days of moonlight, and then Bet, whose letter B, is able to give birth to the 5 epigomenal children. And here we see Atum ejaculating the Horus child underneath the fire brazier. This pumps oxygen into the fire and makes the flame become stronger. This is the Greek version. It's called Harpocrates. This is $9.99 on the back of this coin, and he's sucking his finger, which we just read it over here. They relate that Isis nursed the child by letting it suck on her finger. So the finger is a cipher for 10,000, because in Egyptian numerals, 1 finger equals 10,000, and also the Harpocrates child by itself equals $9.99. So this is a cipher that the Harpocrates child here, or the burning sun being ejaculated out here, is the 10,000 value sun, whereas the most powerful value sun is Ra, the summer sun at noon. which is where letter R comes from. You see the ram horn there? And there's the two falcons or kites wallowing about the pillars. Isis is crying here, where it says here that Isis turns into a swallow. This is the Greek word for these two falcons. This is Isis and this is Nephthys, twin sisters. And there's Osiris trapped in his chest right here. There's a diagram of the situation. Osiris is trapped in a 300 cubit chest. T is equal to 300. And in Greek, this became the word typos, which means the shape of the letters. He floats down to the delta here. The delta again is right here. Atoma ejaculating into the delta, which is the Bet's. Bet's vagina, which is located right here. And that's Bet as the form of the star goddess. And here we see the Eye of Ra located over Byblos, which is at the center of the Teal map. This is a ram horn. This is letter P. So this vertical part right here is the Polaris pole, which is this, which is always vertical. And then the part to the that's pointing like this is the ecliptic pole. That's what the Djed is, or the four pillars of Byblos stacked up. And then Byblos equals 3.14 in alphanumerics. And then this part of the eye, the curl, the ram horn, is where we get the word radius. And we see the diagram again. Four pillars of Byblos become the Djed. And this spelling Djed, now that we decoded this, it probably was phonetically spelled Zai by the Egyptians. And this got rewritten into the Greek version where Cadmus, the Greek Osiris, has to spear a snake on a tree. He pulls out the teeth, and the 5 teeth grow into the Spartans, or the first alphabet letters. And here's an early Thales Teal map, an Anaximander Teal map, Hecataeus Teal map. Here's the Hindu tree. So the Egyptians conquered India, or Sesotris, and he taught them this Teal cosmology. So their tree is called the Banyan tree, or the Akshayavati tree. Hebrew tree is the story of Byblos, where they tried to build, instead of a tree, they tried to make everything monotheistic and get away with the tree story, and instead they invented the Tower of Babel, where they tried to reach to the sky. God destroys it, and this is where the languages came from. Here we see an early version Roman era from +55 or 198, where we see the priest holding a T, and that's the coffin of Osiris. Here we see the Druid versions of the early T, where they would take oak trees, cut the branches off, and bind the branches, and they would write names on the vertical part of the T, left T, right T, which would be equivalent to Nile, Mediterranean, and Phasis. And this got rewritten into the story of Jesus, who gets crucified on a T-shaped tree, and he has 2 people next to him. So here we see another version of the Egyptian T. Here's the Nile, Mediterranean, Phasis. Osiris gets thrown in the Nile, he floats to Byblos. And then here we see the child getting burned here. This is Bet, letter B. And then this is the cow-faced goddess is the Hathor, the Milky Way. She's about to give birth to the new 10,000 value son who sucks on his finger right here. And this got rewritten into the Christian story where a guard spears Jesus, and this spear has to do with the spear of Horus, and this is the ecliptic pole, and this is the Polaris pole, as I understand it. And this got written into the TO maps in the Middle Ages. Here's Isidore Seville's TO map from his Etymologia, where we see Asia, Africa, and Europe. But if we rotate it like this, north, we see Asia over here, Africa, and then Europe this way. Here's the BDS of Libana TO map from plus 776 or 1179A. Where we see the Mediterranean here. This is the Nile. That's the Delta. This is the Fayum Oasis, and this is the Phasis River. Here we see another TO map, where right here we see the 4 pillars of Byblos. There's the 3 pyramids of Egypt. That's the Delta, and the Nile River is red. This is the Mediterranean. This is the Phasis River. And then the Nordic version, Odin gets speared to the tree, and all the runes come out of his body. Here we see another version of the Nordic Osiris tree, Odin getting speared. So the spear, again, has to do with the precession of the equinoxes. So one of these is the spear. I think this one is the spear, and this one is like this. This is the tree is the, let's see, the tree is the ecliptic. This is the tree, ecliptic. So then the spear is the Polaris pole. So he gets speared, and the alphabet letters come out of him at the location of the center of the T map. And then this became typos. and then Leiden Papyrus, the I-350 Papyrus, if you look up stanza 300, this is the only stanza of all the 28 stanzas where Thoth, the alphabet god, is described as making the alphabet letters. So this corroborates the whole story. And here we see a TO map from 632A or 1323 by Paulino Van Ito in his Great Chronology. Where we see Asia, Europe, and Africa, and he's got the only river he has here is the Mediterranean. So it gets changed around, but there's always a center point here. And by this time, it's got shipped to Jerusalem instead of Byblos. And here's the early forms of. So when they started making these, Xi, here's the Fayum Xi, square boxes. Isbet Xi, Cerebit, it's got 3. This is the Cerebit in the Sinai Peninsula. There's ones carved like this. And then the Zayat stone, this is where they started using 3 bars. Instead of 3 bars here, we see a 3-bar Djed or Xi. And then we have the Greek Samos Cup Xi, 3 bars. Bucero Xi in Viterbo, Italy. It's instead of 3 bars that you see the pillar. And then there's the Sponsia Abecedaria Xi, 3 they only show 3 of these instead of 4. 3 pillars. And here we see the Palace of Byblos, or still Pi Palace. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the decoding of the Djed, or the Xi pillar, as we'll call it now.